Welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 100. That's number 100. Lovely little milestone for us to hit. And it's a shame that today of all days, you've been dealing with some issues regarding your health. You've been ill, not the day for it on this monumentous occasion, but we troop on regardless. And I wanted to spend the episode sort of reflecting on our journeys, not just with the podcast, but overall as content creators. But first off, something which I just said I wanted to talk about before we punch record, which someone in my community sent to me, was a picture of one and only well-known internet figure, Mashtag Brady. I'm sure most of you guys will recognize if you don't know his name, wearing a Toe Wrestling Championship shirt. And if my eyes weren't deceiving me, at the Amity Studios, where we recorded a couple of episodes, and of course, where you had your UFC Casuals Corner pop up. So do tell, because I was trying to find something on it and I got nothing. So I need to hear all about this.
So the boys at Amity Studios, they're working with these type of people every single day, every single week, right? Whether it's the Sidemen 1 week doing their Wembley promotional videos, whether it's Mashtag Brady, it's always these type of names and always these type of circles in regards to people within the public eye. And then when it comes to companies and series and Netflix and things, they take care of that side as well. So they're always connected in some very trending and popular names. And he just so happened to be sporting the TWC t-shirt, of which I wore to training the other day, and someone actually said to me, "Oh, I didn't expect toe wrestling to have actually nice apparel." And I said, "We do not cut corners at toe wrestling." That's what I've been saying to people. They don't listen. People don't listen when I say this. This isn't some rinky-dink operation. This is not a joke. This is not a viral TikTok, which has then led me to believe that this is going to be some international business, but it isn't. No, this is a very meticulous operation. Whilst we are nowhere near where we need to be in regards to marketing and product and actually everything a business needs, the foundations are there. And when we do increase the output a little bit more on those things, people will start realising that. So yeah, Mashtag Brady was in the t-shirt this week. Obviously, we was on Britain's Got Talent the week before that, then Forbes the week before that, then Huck Magazine in the same week. So
leveling up. Yeah,
it's been a pretty intense couple of weeks for toe wrestling on the surface of it all.
And for yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah, and for myself.
I mean, it never isn't. Let's be real.
With that said, it also just makes me realise how quick things are moving with that and how quick I need to move with that. And it has been difficult trying to balance it all out, because I always say multitasking is multi-failing, and it's true. You really want to be doing one thing and want to be doing one thing well, but that's never how my brain's been able to operate, and that's never how I've enjoyed things. So although it is frustrating doing multiple things and not being able to apply yourself as much, it's the world I live in, and there is a lot for me to do in regards to toe wrestling. The product, the todium, sorting out the prototype for the actual todium to get sent out, and then the whole build up to the World Championships as well, and finding a £10,000 prize fund as well for that. So,
just normal things. Imagine saying that to your 10-year-old self, that this is what you'd be doing, down the line. Pretty crazy to think about. And I think that just goes back to what I was saying about using this episode and as the time to reflect on where we've come, and I guess where we're really going as well. And I think, why not let's do this on recording. Or let's maybe think of some ways looking forward rather than back that we can level up with regards to our content, but also with the podcast as well, where we can build, where we can grow and expand, using the opportunities we have and the leverage that we have, right? That's the word we like to use. So I don't know, maybe a little bit of brainstorming. What do you think? What do you think?
Personally,
shoot.
For myself, one of the biggest differences that I've made to my workflow is creating very, very clear guidelines and systems to things that happen every single week. So I've spoke a little bit about this before. When I reach out to my assistant and say, hey, these are the posts that we're going to need to schedule this week. It's not done in an ad hoc way where I just send a bunch of files and then, okay, these are some descriptions. No, I've centralized everything to Notion so that everything's on there in a very clear way, which can be, firstly, easily read, easily downloaded, and then easily ticked off. So it's easy to map. Then you've got a place for invoices. Then you've got a place for FAQs so that general questions that keep coming up can go there. Then you have a place for sort of guidelines, brand guidelines. So colors, fonts, text, positions, and then thumbnail guidelines, for example. So just trying to get as much information in a centralized location so that it can basically free up more of my time, so that it can then be referred to, and then it doesn't have to be me being the first point of contact to then explain the answer, go back and forth, and then create the resolution. So just taking that step out has been quite major for me. And then it's also been major in the sense that it's forced me to do that a week in advance. So I've got that done by the Sunday so that when it hits Monday, I've got a week full of content already scheduled, and I haven't even sat down to do my first task. So in theory, that frees up the next 7 days for the most part to then turn my attention to things that need it, like the toe wrestling, like a million different things at the moment, to be perfectly honest. I'm doing subpar, but that's been one of the biggest shifts for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think for me, it's not necessarily looking forward the idea of optimizing workflow, though obviously that is going to be the case. I'm going to be working towards doing that. It's more so reaching new areas which I hadn't been doing before, or trying out new things and adding variety. I know what we just said about multi-failing and wanting to focus on one thing, but for me, what I've realized is I'm more the same as well. I just need to have my attention on different things in order to keep myself creatively stimulated. And I think looking to the rest of this year, something I'm really pushing to do, that especially I realized today, I was like, okay, I really want to start making inroads towards these things, is looking at doing live commentary on fight events, and also trying my hand at doing radio in some capacity, live radio with sport and mixed martial arts. So I'm going to be looking at inroads on ways or pathways to doing those things, even if it's just a small step and just a couple of hours a week, just researching or reaching out to people, networking. That's going to be my MO for in the foreseeable future. And that excites me a lot.
Well, what does that look like practically?
In the future, or like down the line, or?
How do you get that started? How do you get the ball rolling? How do you get some reps in?
Well, I think the age-old, not question, statement, whatever you want to call it, is that it's not what you know, it's who you know. So network. I'm going to reach out to people. That's what I did before I started YouTube, right? Before I started even making videos, I was reaching out to people asking for advice or any sort of nugget of golden information I could get, right? And that's what I'm going to be trying to do. And of course, I'm in the position now where I have much more connections. I have much more people I know who I can reach out to. And of course, I spoke to Paul, of course, who we've had on the show, who's got experience doing commentary. And, you know, I was going to have a chat with him, actually. We briefly talked about it. So that will be on the list to do so.
How can you get some more reps in?
Practically. That's an interesting question. I mean, in terms of radio, I feel like I'm already doing that. We're always doing that, right? By speaking live, even like what we're doing now, or live streaming, another perfect example. Just getting in front of the camera, which I feel like I'm already doing a good amount of, getting better at. What I'm curious to do is going back and looking at the older episodes we've recorded, and also just my earlier times on camera since I've started YouTube, and I want to see the difference, because I haven't actually gone back and done that. I would like to try and do that and see the difference I've made, and how much better I am at flowing, if you want to say, to see the improvement. So there's that, and also from a commentary side of things, that's a bit more foreign, right? That's a new avenue I haven't explored at all. Even though there are some skills that I can directly translate over, as I said, like we're doing now, talking to the camera. But I think with something like that, it's going to come to just reaching out, trying to get an opportunity, and then diving in head first.
Disagree slightly.
Interesting. Okay.
Obviously, that's how you'll get the opportunity itself. I don't think, no, not I don't think, categorically, the best way to learn is always doing the thing, right? So you're going to learn the most by actually going on the hot mic and doing the commentary for sure. But you can definitely
that's what I mean.
yeah, but you can definitely get reps, is what I was going to say, before you go and do that. So it isn't even a foreign concept. So there's a million different ways and ways that you could sort of angle this, that you could commentate fights now.
Interesting. I feel like I know which avenue you're going down. I feel like you're talking about
Make your
watch-alongs or
own
something
one.
like that. That's a path. I could do that.
Watch-alongs is a very good idea to start with, and it definitely can be. But there's two type of watch-alongs, and people don't really realize this. People always ask me to live
That's
stream
true.
in fights, which I don't mind doing, but I don't watch any fights apart from a Saturday evening. And when I'm watch-alonging, if that's a term, which I don't think it is, you can't do both. You can't speak to a chat, give your thoughts, articulate what's happening, and
Very
then
true.
actually digest the fights, which I always find quite jarring, so I don't enjoy doing it that much. So you can do watch-alongs, for sure. I don't really think there's a right answer or a wrong answer. You could get old fight footage on YouTube, which is from prehistoric regional shows of famous people, Michael Bisping or Conor McGregor or something, just a funny angle, right? That's kind of an interesting angle to spin. I've not really heard anyone do that.
Yeah.
And then just commentate back over them. You don't even have to post them necessarily. But there's so many angles that you could use. So for sure, jumping in at the deep end is always a good idea, but you could also get some refinements to your game before you even went and did that anyway.
Yeah, and there's no pressure on doing something like that, right? Because it's just yourself, recording to yourself. So, and I've got experience with that too. So you're right, that is definitely a pathway. But I've realized I want to get more, not necessarily in front of the camera, though obviously that's not something I'm too fussed about. I'm happy to do that. It's more so just being on the microphone. Like even little things, like I just realized how much I love talking. I've always been a big talker, so I guess that translates perfectly. But it's just the natural pathway of progression for me as I get more confident in front of the mic and, stringing sentences together, and just all the pieces point towards doing something within that vein of like we're talking now. So that excites me a little bit. So new horizons for me. On top of course, maintaining the documentaries I'm doing on YouTube, which of course only extends those skills and adds to the reps. So
what's been one of the biggest things you've learned in the YouTube vein recently?
Recently, I mean, for me, it's always been like a mindset shift. I think that's what I realized recently. I got into a pitfall, and I told myself when I started doing YouTube that I didn't want to fall down this path in treating it so much like a job and so much rigidity and stuff like that. Real enjoyment with what I do and what I create comes with the flexibility, right? It comes with the freedom, which, as we talked about last week, is everything we value, is the freedom and flexibility to do what we want when we want it. And I realized I kept making the mistake of sticking such to a strict structure of I need to have this done by this time, or this video needs to follow these guidelines, or it needs to be this certain amount of length, and everything overly optimized. I went too far in the other direction. So I realized that stripping back and being a bit more free-flowing with my approach across every facet of the pipeline, whether it's ideation or the editing process or even writing as well, like I'm just not cutting back on the effort per se. I'm still putting in the effort. It's just the approach to how I actually make these pieces come together. I'm just being a bit more easygoing on it, if that makes any sense. It's kind of hard to describe. It's almost like an innate feeling, an intangible. Yeah, it's something like that, and that's helped a lot actually recently.
What are you going to do proactively then moving forwards for this commentary thing? Just out of interest, I just formulated that very robotically, but
yeah, I mean,
just basically
it's hard to say. No, I get what you mean. Yeah, it's hard to say because it's like it's been a passing thought in my mind, right? But I think back to what we talked about, the idea shelf, right? If it's staying there for a long period of time, then you know it's something you got to pursue, and that's exactly it, right? So I've always had that in the back of my mind, but I haven't acted on it. And then I was thinking about it today because I was just being creatively inspired. I was like, I need to push for something different, something new to keep myself stimulated. And I was like, why don't I just take these first steps and go for it. So that's it just came to me today, and I was like, right, let's go for it. So I wouldn't say I have any particular specifics that I'm going to go for besides what we mentioned about reaching out to people, networking, and of course, practically getting those reps in, whether it's commentating over old fights or just trying my luck at a local promotion. Any of those, right? Let's just look at something to do.
Have you reached out to any yet?
Say that. No, I'm telling you, this thought literally came to me only a few hours ago. I was saying, like, it came back to me. What should I say? Because obviously it has been on the idea shelf. So it's very fresh in the mind.
I've got a gig for you.
Okay. I'm scared of what you're going to say, almost.
What? I got you a job.
Okay, shoot. What is it?
Ashbourne, 2025, August 29th.
Oh, is it? Is this what I think it is? Commentating.
You wanted a commentary job.
Is this TWC? Is this what we're doing?
Yeah, the World
Is this
Championships.
what we're talking? Yeah. Yeah, sure. When is it? August.
End of August.
100%. I'll have to get some reps in, of course. I'm more than happy.
There we go. So we've got one commentator for the event. Perfect. Look at how that just happened.
There you go.
And by the way, let me put this on record as well. You are not going to commentate any event which is going to get more eyeballs than this as your first one. I guarantee that for an absolute fact.
No, you're not wrong.
There is no MMA. There's no MMA organization or show in the world that is giving. Firstly, just anyone who would give you that opportunity is not going to garner as much attention as this is. I guarantee that in blood, unless it's the UFC, which you're not going to commentate for them anytime soon. So I can say wholeheartedly.
Don't listen. I'll be there.
But not soon.
No.
If you want to talk in multiples of years, then sure. Why not, right? That's where you want to shoot for. But if you want to talk 2 years or 3 years or 4, the chances are very small for that. For people that even work in-house already and want that gig, let alone that work out of house with no current ties. So, not saying impossible, but just saying no time soon.
No,
but there you go. I've already just got you a high-flying commentary gig in seconds.
Thing is, how do you even? I'm thinking about that and visualizing it. How do you even approach those play-by-play moments? You know, how does that even? If you're thinking like of the anatomy of feet going against one another, how do you even? Trying to think of the words you would even use to describe that. It's definitely a unique challenge. If it is to be the first of many, that is some challenge, I have to say. But that's what we're made for, right?
You have to lean into. I actually think it's pretty perfect for you, to be honest, because more so than in MMA, the style that you do with your videos leans into not necessarily glorifying, but amplifying is probably the better word. The stories of the competitors. So that would be the exact case in this. But obviously, we want to lean into the WWE elements of that. Now, you're not going to get that with every competitor, but you'll definitely get that with a few in regards to their character and their storyline and that sort of WWE element. So you can build that into it. You entwine that into their actual characters, then the performance, then the games and whatnot. And you just have a bit of fun with it. I think that's the most important
I agreed. Thing. And I'd also say, going back to what you said about the amplifying and the theatrical side of things, that's, for me, if I wanted to cultivate my own style, I can already see that's an avenue I want to go down. You know, Peter Drury commentates on football. He's very similar vibe, right? I guess it's just a natural progression for me. That's what the words I used earlier. It just makes sense with the style I focus on my videos of, you know, dressing up these stories and making them grand. Shakespearean is the word I like to use. It's a natural progression for me if I was to go into commentary to not necessarily to the same level, but keep the spirit of that tone and that style, right? Yeah, and make it a natural fit for commentary. So, yeah, I feel like I could nail that. And of course, I would be very willing to do my research and when a lot of other people probably wouldn't, not with toe wrestling specifically, but there are commentators within the UFC, I'm not going to name any names, who definitely don't do as much research as they probably should. And that does frustrate me. I feel like I would be pretty good at getting my knowledge ready and prepared.
True, and I don't disagree necessarily. But for some of those guys, it's not easy. Not easy in regards to having some fight cards which would have 15 fights, right? So then you have 30 fighters, and then essentially preparation has to begin. I've heard them speak on the Monday or the Tuesday, and they haven't even got back from the last fight night location because they were in Atlanta, and this next week is the pay-per-view, and it's in Sydney. And then they've got other work commitments and family and jobs. And I'm not saying that other people who have jobs don't have this. I'm just painting more of a comprehensive picture so that people can sort of get a little bit of insight into this, because typically they wouldn't, right? So not only do you have 30 fighters to research, you then have to do it on basically just a couple of days. Maybe you get an aeroplane flight to the next location and you have to do it there. And then you have to sort of do it on the fly and then go on a hot mic and talk about it for 7 hours, not fumble, and be pretty much bang on. And then a fight drops out, so you've done a bit of research for some person, and that's not necessarily applicable to the show anymore. So it isn't easy, especially with the rosters nowadays as well. There's so many people.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good idea, actually. It's funny you said that, because I was actually thinking the same recently. In fact, I did actually start getting the ball rolling with it. And then start reaching out to people. So I don't know if it's something that don't think. It isn't something I want to do week in, week out, every single Saturday, and commentating fights and just being relentlessly on that grind. No, I almost want to lean into it a little bit more of a fair-weathered fan in regards to Casual's Corner appearance on the desk this evening kind of vibe.
Yeah, a little special appearance.
Yeah, 100%. Where
that fits
I would
you, for sure.
100%, a bit more aloof, where I kind of turn up to an event and I can still go backstage and create some content, and I can still chat to people here and there, but I also maybe do a 2-hour stint on the desk where I can stay dialed in, I'll stay locked in, I'll have my research done, and we'll talk about certain fights, and then I'll bounce.
I already know a guy who is, perfect person to talk to about all of this, who's got experience in all of that regard. And there's a guy we've actually had on the show before, who's actually just come back from a little hiatus, Ben the Bane Davis, of course.
Yeah.
You know, has all the knowledge of the logistical side of things when it comes to commentating or being in front of the camera on a live show. It's not just being on desk, but in every facet, of course, with the work he's done with Misfits and all of the other smaller promotions. I know, working on Anthony Pettis's promotion, I can't remember exactly the name. But
APFC.
Stuff like that. So he's APFC. There you go. So exactly the type of guy to talk to and reach out. So there is that. And of course, as I mentioned, the other side of the coin, the potential of doing radio or something like that. Maybe with something like that would be more of a sporadic approach, like you said, just making a sort of appearance here and there. Or maybe it'd be something I really delve deeper into. It depends what I find best. But that excites me too.
I would guess that I'm probably going to be on a mainstream radio show in the next few months. I would guess.
You would guess? Is this based off of seeds that have been planted, something that's been in the works, or you just got a hunch?
Toe wrestling is always on the radio. I got a message from my friend the other day. He was at work and they had the radio on, and he said, "They keep talking about toe wrestling. Is this anything to do with you?" I said, "I don't know what the conversation is, but more than likely, yes, I would guess so." And as I got that message from him, which is a long-time friend, and we don't message every day, so it wasn't a mid-conversation. He went out his way to drop me that message. And then as I got that, I got a WhatsApp through from the world champion, Total Destruction, and said, "We just featured on the Greatest Hits radio." So we're always on the radio. The Greatest Hits, we was on Radio 1 Extra or something along those lines when Ben went in for the Challenger. We'll be on the local radio in the build-up to it. So I would
remember, you're the new Dana White.
Imagine.
That's your platform.
Yeah.
That's absolutely your opportunity to go and you have the reps. You are charismatic in front of the camera and on the microphone. You know how to sell something. You know how to promote. mate, that's your wheelhouse. Get in there.
Yeah.
Maybe
It really
we'll
is.
come back to what we said. Maybe be proactive.
Yeah.
Go and take the initiative. Go reach out to some radio stations. Try and get on there.
Oh, 100% actually. I've got
you call it a hunch. Make it something to
I've
happen.
got a call with the team afterwards, and that's what I'll tell them. Obviously, we've got a million moving parts to try and set up for the World Championships, but obviously one part of it is going to be promotion, and a lot of times it's the competitor that gets brought on, so it's Ben. But then also it gets to a point when there's only so many that he can do, and there's only so many times that they'll have that same conversation, whereas they may want to ask me about it a little bit more from the business side, a little bit more from the marketing side, and how I see it from my angle. And mate, you know what I'm like, I can speak about that for days with extreme amounts of enthusiasm, so it's no problem for me. So I do anticipate the radio shows. I do anticipate Ariel Hawani. I would be shocked if it doesn't get an Ariel Hawani interview. And if it doesn't, he's slacking. I'm telling you that for a fact, because it's wrestling, it's combat sports, it's growth, and it's opportunities at the end of the day, which is something that he always talks about. So
yes,
Ariel Hawani,
good point,
and Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan as well. Aim high, why not, right?
Yeah, I think that will probably be a name drop more than an interview in the next couple of months, but I do anticipate a Joe Rogan interview.
I can see that. 100% I can see that. Him talking about him smoking far too much weed with a random guest on, and then they'll get Jamie to pull up a clip of toe wrestling. 100%. I could see that happening tomorrow. Stars have just got a line for something like that, and I guess it just comes to online presence and just being so oppressively out there, just it being relentless. It's like I remember the conversation we had. You just talked about, you don't necessarily recognize the impact you have, but because you've been out there, you've put so much out there, and your face is absolutely everywhere, and the numbers, they don't really lie at the end of the day. People just start to recognize you, know who you are. And I remember you talked about that first conversation you had with Michael Bisping about how he just knew, he just said keep it casual, and that's just because of that relentless push of countless reps you've just had over the last 4 years, right? So that is just what it has to be with toe wrestling, and it's what it will be.
Yeah, 100%. I always say to the team, and this is on me as well, but like I said, right, it's when you're juggling so many balls, it's hard to sort of keep them all in rotation properly at the right time. But I believe there's so many different things to do with toe wrestling as a business, as a structure, as an actual sport globally. I could sit here and list off 200 not that interesting things that need to be taken care of in the background, and a million different processes and whatever else. However, I won't do that. But what I will do is tell you that the simple fact of the TWC is as follows. If the content is there, the rest takes care of itself. If the content is there, the rest will take care of itself. If there is a constant stream of media production around this from on our end, the rest will take care of itself. Because everyone does it for us, first and foremost. We get hit up every single day by major outlets. Can we record this? Can we film this? Can we feature this? Can we meet you? Can we interview you? Every single day. We just got message from flipping, before I jumped on this call, the Spanish Britain's Got Talent. Hey, do you want to come and be on the show? That's every single day, right? I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Every single day. So the outer world will also take care of it. But if we can just create a system and a nucleus that's just churning out constant content, then that's really where things are just... I look at my... slight side tangent, but I look at my business and I look at the different things I've got going on at the moment, and I think, what's going to be that thing within what I do now that changes everything forever? That my life never looks the same because of that, for a positive thing. Now, I look at this a couple of ways, and I think, is it me crafting the best pair of Muay Thai shorts and creating nice promotion around it, and then next thing I know, Central C's got them when he goes to Thailand? Quite possibly. And my world changes forever and it's never the same. Or is it I just absolutely double down on the TWC, take my roles and responsibilities so seriously, and then I am basically at the top of a sport which is taking over the world, and my life will never be the same again. And I just think in timelines, I think both are possible and will take place. But I think in regards to timelines, and I think my mind just always comes back to the TWC just because of the speed that it moves through the world, that it just reaches every angle of this flipping globe in such monumental ways. I can't help but think it's just always toe wrestling, to be honest. Whenever I think about it.
Listen, put it this way. On the idea shelf, before the conception, I know it wasn't necessarily your idea, but in terms of the idea to jump on that and the opportunity of toe wrestling, where would that rank on the idea shelf in comparison to everything else you've ever done since starting your creative journey?
How do you
That's
mean
the question.
rank?
Priority or potential? All of them. Everything put together. Every characteristic.
They're different. Potential and priority drastically different, right? So at the moment,
for sure,
priority-wise, it isn't my number one priority. It can't be, because my number one priority has to be the thing that at least generates me money in the short run to then fund me being able to do both. So that's important to know.
Right. I was going to say, because if it's financial, it doesn't necessarily have to be. If you're in a position where you have money anyway, right? But again, if you're talking about funding, then yeah, I understand.
If we go to potential, I would sit here and tell you casuals could be Nike. So I would say, or Gymshark. So I would tell you the potential is infinite on that. But if I'm talking about long-lasting legacy, decades in the game, cornerstone of a sport, there is no business opportunity that I have personally been a part of or seen or thought of that has as much potential as this. None. None.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I can
Just from
that.
all of the angles that I've spoke about it before, the way that it has the ability to not monopolize a market, but be the central figure to a market, right?
Yeah.
So be the leading name in a sport, the way that it can then leverage media production off the back of it, the way that it can leverage apparel off the back of it, the way that the opportunities just keep growing for it kind of makes me think opportunities are so endless with this. Sure, we can set it up as a traditional sport where it looks something a little bit like darts and something a little bit like slap fighting and something a little bit like the WWE and something a little bit like arm wrestling. But then off the back of that, we can do things that other people can't do, including the UFC, including all of these organizations, because they don't have in-house media production to the level that we have it. We simply don't, right?
That's true.
Fact.
Actually, just on that point, I was rewatching the promo you did, the sort of rip off of NASA press conference one. That is shot so beautifully. Yeah. I get, and as I said, that just speaks to how high the production value is and what the guys at Amity are doing. That is shot so well. I mean, it's professional grade, isn't it? So, yeah. You can leverage that, right? So much opportunity with that. Exciting me.
That's the thing, right? Because what you have in all of these organizations is you have the resources to outsource that. Sure. And they can do that, right? And there's positives to that and there's drawbacks to that as well, because sometimes it is just easier to outsource. On top of that, you don't have the company or the sport built from that angle from the ground up. You know, the UFC was not creating Netflix-worthy promotional trailers from the first day that they started the organization. They simply weren't. If you look at the boxing world now, and maybe we can touch on a little bit of the fights in a bit, but you look at the boxing world and what the Ring Magazine are doing, and look at what they're doing between Tyson Fury and the Usyks of the world when they're building these fights, it is to that scale and it is to that degree, right? So there is a slight shift in that. But then off the back of that...
And, yeah, that's true. Sorry, go.
No, all I was going to say is off the back of that, we then own the archives. We own the narrative. We own the storytelling. We own the ability to curate the sport in any which way we want, which are some freedoms that a lot of organizations, when they set up, they don't necessarily have, but we do.
UFC didn't have that.
No, they didn't. They didn't have that, right? There's a lot of similarities that I draw to. I've watched so many podcasts and interviews and breakdowns and business insiders into WWE and UFC and Karate Combat and listened to the inner workings of so many of these businesses. And the cool thing about that, CJI, the cool thing about that is because you can just take little pieces from everyone's journey and just melt them into the TWC how I see fit or how we see fit as the board. So really blessed to have that position, because if we're first, we have to think, how do we do this? What's a good idea here? And what's a good process here? But we can look at all of these different organizations, the NFL, the Premier League, the UFC. We can look at all of these people and go, right, I like that. Let's discard that. They do this well. This is nice. And then you can just sort of marry them together. So coming back to your original question with the idea shelf, in regards to potential, this is a multi-billion-pound entity if operated and executed correctly. I have no qualms in saying that. If it isn't, it's not because it can't be, it's because it hasn't been executed well enough. If it's executed well enough, it'll be a billion-pound entity, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually a very good point. Because there's one thing, having, or recognizing, rather, the potential of a business, of an idea, but the biggest mistake people make, and that's why 90% or whatever the stat is of businesses fail, it's because they're not executed properly. That's an analogy used on practically in the games industry as well. There's a stat, again, I won't touch on this too on a little side tangent, but only 3% of independent games ever actually turn a profit. And that sounds like a damning statistic, even though it is factually true. But the reason that is because most people who make those games, they might have a great idea, but the execution is always terrible from a design perspective, but more importantly, a marketing one as well. And that's something which you can 100% apply to TWC. I mean, it's almost like the marketing does itself. As you said, those opportunities are just arriving because of the innate appeal of the sport. So that's an advantage you have. But within the games industry, that's the biggest mistake people make, is failure to market at all. And the dumb expectation that people are going to, be attracted to your project, your idea, your game, just because you think the idea is good enough, when you know deep down the reality is it's far bigger than that. You need to be able to push your game with marketing campaigns and everything in between. And I think the same applies to TWC and its execution, whether that's through marketing, but also the sport, presentation, everything put together. You're right. It's down to the execution, not just the idea.
Yeah, 100%. And also, the reason why I'm always so confident to say that as well is because I've already been given so much evidence to suggest that's the case, right? I've seen the beginnings of the documentary that they're actually making on the film. I've seen the trajectory of the people and the companies behind it, but then I've seen how people have taken to it in first hand, by the way, going to pubs and seeing how people receive it on a tiny microscopic scale. Because the interesting thing is when I've been to events, in the general scheme of things, there's no one there, because even at the championships, they say there's a few hundred people there. In the general scheme of the world, there's not a lot of people, especially when you can post a video on the Tone Wrestling and it gets 5 million views. So the video gets 5 million views, and then I'm at the event in London and there's maybe 25 people there. But that's why it's so incredible, right? Because I see digitally the attention that it can gain and the pull that it can have, but then I can see what it can actually do to a consumer in live speed, and the emotions that people get and the attachment that they get and the energy that they get.
That's the challenge.
Not really.
That's the challenge. No?
Not really.
So? I feel like that's the hardest part, is converting those people into people who actively want to be willing participants in person. Engaging with the product in person, in a stadium, or in an arena, right? I feel like that's the obstacle. How do you go about approaching that?
I don't think it is.
Why do you say that?
Because it's not that hard to get people to do it.
Okay.
That's why the sport is why I think the ceiling's so high, because the barrier to entry, I actually think, is so low that often when people think it's difficult to get people involved, it's because they think I wouldn't do it, or oh, that's kind of gross, I wouldn't like that. Sure, there's plenty of those people as well. That's just a fact, right? It's the same as when people go and play football. A lot of the people that are in the stands watching wouldn't actually go and play football. Oh, it's a bit muddy, or it's a bit cold, or I can't bother to run. I'd rather sit here with a pint and a fag and watch them play. It's the exact same thing. I've never actually seen too much of a struggle to get people involved. Obviously, we're talking on a smaller scale, but it's a pubs. This is something that I said before as well. Someone said to me, "What if it failed?" And I said, "Well, what does that even mean? What does that look like?" And they said, "Well, no one comes to the events and no one wants to play." And I said, "Okay, cool. We just flip what it means as regards to the TWC. We create it more of a media outlet. And then we go back to the roots of what the sport is, which is a pub sport. So you only need 8 people to play in a pub. And I promise you, pretty easy to do. Really is. You get them a little bit boozed up and you put a bit of cash on the line.
I was going to say.
And that is all you need. People are very simple. People are very simple. CGI put up £1 million or $1 million for the winner of CGI 1. But you have to then, in turn, be good at jiu-jitsu to do that. Now, that's a tremendous barrier to entry because there's, even for an average consumer, there's a lot of levels to being good at that. But where you look at something like an arm wrestle or a toe wrestle, because there's such finite rules, someone looks at that and they're so much closer to it as a sport because there's less degrees of separation. They go, I'll give it a go. Boom. You've instantly just eased that barrier to entry and you've already got participants. And also culturally, I think that's an important thing to open up. If we think about areas that have traditional backgrounds in wrestling and have traditional backgrounds in other sports, we're thinking about the UK and whatnot, sure, but we've not even thought about, okay, what happens when toe wrestling gets into India?
Right. It's like, that's an interesting point of view because it's like you have completely different cultures there and they, you know, for better or worse, right? You don't know how it's going to play out, but they might take to it with a complete different passion or excitement towards it, right? So they're like, I don't know, I couldn't think of one specifically or a specific country or area, region.
I can. I'll give you 2. So firstly, India is going to be more susceptible to this sport than a Thailand, for example, because Thailand, you said about for good or bad, so I'll give you a bad. So Thailand, for example, within the culture, feet is a very disrespectful part of the body. It's very disrespectful to put your foot near someone or pick something up with your foot or really any really anything to do with the feet is disrespectful. Hence why some of the biggest disrespect would be to keep your shoes on when you go into places and different things of that nature, right? So it's going to be less well received in a Thailand, for example. If you do Muay Thai and you keep someone in the face, that's one of the most disrespectful moves, right? Because it's your foot in someone's face and it gets them all a little bit angry. Yeah. Whereas India, they're a lot more liberal with things like that. And I know Kabaddi isn't the same, but they have a history of combat sports, right? Kabaddi is one of the most major sports in India, which I've played before, which again is a combat sport. It's a little bit like wrestling. It's a little bit like rugby. So different cultures will take to it differently for sure. And it's just different markets that we get to open it up into. So I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thought because yes, it might be further down the line, but there is realistically, if the execution is done right, that's a reality you're gonna have to face. So it's good to get an idea or an expectation of what might be or what is to come, should I say?
But also think of it like this, right? We're in year 2, and we already have people flying from around the world to come and compete in the World Championships that are documenting it with large platforms. So,
can you name any names there outside of the one I just said?
Not 100% confirmed, but him would be a good example. But then you have to think about that.
Sorry.
Next year, let's say it's 50,000, like we would forecast, and you've got someone in Azerbaijan, who's 6'4", an incredible wrestler, and is just strong. And he looks at the flights on Skyscanner, and it's £420 return, and he's thinking, I could quickly go and win 50 grand here. I'm probably going to go and take that risk. And now you've got people coming in from all over the world to come and compete in Ashbourne for the World Championships.
Yeah, that would be so, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's all fun and games till he faces the world champ, though. That's the thing. The work cut out for him.
This is what's funny as well, right? Is what I've noticed, which I find very interesting, is anyone that has any level of participation in the sport, they then realise the degrees of separation. So they then understand the levels to it. And then they understand that the world champion is world championship caliber. And it isn't easy to just rock up and beat him. So yeah, there's a pretty prize fund at the end. And sure, this is a sport which doesn't seem that difficult. And then they face the champ and they realise, okay, there's levels to this. Yeah, I'm probably not winning. So I do always find that shift quite interesting as well.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to just, once you go past the surface level, right, there is such a, we're talking purely on an athletic and sporting side of things, there's such a deeper level which people don't realise. And I feel like, again, we draw comparisons to something like the UFC or MMA as a whole. That was the same thing. On the surface level, back when the UFC more specifically first started, it was kind of shunned, mocked as a freak show. And that was what it was marketed as, to be fair. But what we didn't know was how deep, from an athletic and technical perspective, that sport would actually come to be. And as you see toe wrestling expand and grow bigger, you're going to see the evolution of the sport before our very eyes. And that's such an exciting thing and a privilege in a lot of ways to witness.
Hot take as well?
I feel like I know what you're going to say here.
Go on.
No, actually, that's too hot. You're not. I don't believe you're going to say that. Actually, I was going to say you think it would have a deeper level of technicality than something like MMA, but I feel like that's a little bit too rogue, even for you.
That's not what I was going to say.
Okay.
But I do believe maybe not. Let me actually think about this. I think the level of athlete will lag a little bit, but I think the information of the athletes within the sport will vastly surpass something like mixed martial arts. Vastly surpass it.
In terms of personas, right?
No, in terms of people participating in the sport having a good to strong understanding of health and fitness and how to improve within the sport in toe wrestling will be vastly superior to something like MMA.
Yeah, but in terms of, go more specific with that.
Put it this way: the reason why I say this, there are infinite mixed martial artists professionally that have little to no idea about nutrition, have little to no idea about recovery, have little to no idea about how to actually do anything for their health outside of fighting. People have this really warped perspective that the people that are best at doing the thing are the people that are the most knowledgeable. They think because a lot of these guys are professional MMA fighters, they're the best ones to talk about techniques and they're the best ones to talk about health and strength and conditioning and nutrition. No, they're really not. They're really not. You get some unicorns that are good at both, right? So you get a unicorn like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who is phenomenally talented as a striker, but he's also articulate enough to break down what is happening and tell you why it's happening. But that is not the case for a lot of these guys with any sport, by the way, not just MMA, but obviously it's the thing that we speak about mutually. It's the same with football. If you go to a very good footballer and you expect for him to be a very good coach or for him to give good analysis or a good breakdown because he's good at football,
a lot of bad pundits out there.
You're being for a rude awakening. So I think the sport is going to be sort of based off not entirely, but based off the foundation of understanding the importance of foot health and how to improve it and the impact and implications it can have on your life and how to actually be a better athlete, and have all of these pieces of information and content actually ran through more of the mainstream content of the toe wrestling itself. So that's why I think that's actually going to shift. Because if you think of the UFC, they obviously do a great job at promoting MMA, and they do a good job in other ways of promoting how to be healthier and how to have more information, sure, but that isn't a sort of main pillar of focus of their media content. It would be more showing fights and highlights and reels and interviews and things like that. So sure, that's good. But I actually think to improve the athlete, to improve the sport faster, we need to emphasize how these people can actually improve and give them the tools, which is the knowledge of doing that.
Yeah. Mic drop. I mean, you want to talk about having the reps and the skills to radio commentary? There's your answer. Off the rip, no stutters, no failures in any capacity. Smashed it. You do a better job than me. But yeah, that was very true. But I think it's just a little thing to round off, because you did touch on it earlier, just for the last 5-10 minutes or so, because of course we do talk about martial arts, but we also love boxing as well. And I'm sure that you watched and you know where I'm going with this. Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. I have to say, the last 3 rounds of that fight were some of the best boxing I've ever watched. And, you know, we say, and we have spoken on here multiple times before, that we aren't the biggest boxing fans, in the sense that it's not necessarily our primary wheelhouse. We don't know all the ins and outs, but we can appreciate it from a sporting level. From my viewing, or limited compared to some experts, I would say those last 3 rounds were some of the best I've ever watched. Second to Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano 2. If you go watch that fight, that last round is the best you will ever watch in your life, ever. But I have to say, the one on Saturday night was definitely a close second. Phenomenal. Honestly, what a fight.
I'm going to take MMA out of my handle on Instagram.
Really? I think that makes sense. Because I don't necessarily know about Instagram's algorithm, but with something like YouTube, I should probably do the same almost. Now I'm thinking about it. I've got it in my handle as well. And the reason I say that is YouTube will get its algorithm. It's so smart, and the systems behind it, at knowing who to push your videos to, right? Keywords aren't that relevant as much as they used to be, because their systems have got so intelligent at knowing where to push your videos to the right people. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you're going to post MMA content anyway, I don't know if Instagram's going to work exactly the same, but it should do its job of pushing it to the right audiences regardless. And of course, Casuals as a brand is bigger than just MMA, and it's grown bigger than that. It might have started specifically just to be an MMA media outlet, but you would be the first to say it's so much more than that now and going forward. So I'm supportive of that decision.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the platforms and helping them out, because like you said, they're powerful and smart enough to be able to do that anyway. It's more so how people perceive you from the get to start with, and how also you subconsciously perceive yourself and what you lean into, right? And I think the longer it's there, when people land on my page, let's say they do like Muay Thai, they do like boxing or even kickboxing. If they just saw MMA, for example, they might think, don't really watch as much MMA, you know? But if I've thought for a long time, I know you talk about side tangents, this is one. Have you ever seen The Social Network?
Yeah, of course. I've actually rewatched it not that long ago.
Such a good film, and I'm not really a film guy, but I love a true story, and I love a true story behind business. So the two
even
of
if
those
dramatized,
together,
it is great. I have to say, yeah.
Yeah, but it isn't massively dramatized.
It's not far off the truth. Yeah.
No, it's a pretty dramatic story creating Google. So. Was it Google? I can't know. Facebook.
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 Clearly love the movie, yeah.
Honestly, my brain has just been a bit slump recently. It's been low on nutrients. But there's always this one scene which really sticks out to me in that film. And it's when Justin...
Can I guess? Go on. Okay, you already give me a bit of a hint, but I feel like I know what you're going to talk about.
I don't think
is it? No. I think I will. Is it the scene in the club when he's talking about like Victoria's Secret? and the guy who created Victoria's Secret? Or is it the scene at the dinner when he's talking about how much Facebook is valued, or it's going to be, and the trajectory it's on? I feel like it's that. That makes more sense. Relevant to our conversation
Victoria's
today.
Secret part?
He's talking to, I think it's Mark Zuckerberg or Jesse Eisenberg, in the club, talking about telling the story about the creator of Victoria's Secret who sold his majority share for it after a certain value, and then like a year later it had 20 times its value, and it's like worth over $1 billion or something, and he committed suicide. It was either that, or you were going to go down the route about the Facebook's how much it's worth, or the same scene, the name drop. It says just change it from the Facebook to Facebook. That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the one. Same scene,
right?
same
and
scene. But you know,
when you said the dinner, I thought, no way is he actually going to get this, because it's actually just kind of niche. But
I've
that
seen it,
exact
I've seen
one.
it.
So for anyone listening, what happens is they have this whole dinner, and the way that it's filmed and edited makes you think, and it seems that they've been there for hours. So they have multiple drinks, they're laughing, there's a lot of conversation, which is just kind of in the hustle and bustle that you can't really make out. And then he leaves the mill and he just walks out by himself, and then he just turns around, and the only audible part that you get of that scene, he turns around and says, drop the Facebook, much cleaner, and he just walks off. And I have thought about this personally and attached to that in some capacity every day since, to some subconscious level, not necessarily at the forefront of my mind.
Can I double up on that? Actually, you say remove MMA. I would remove corner as well. I don't know how you get the handle for it. I just make it casuals. Yeah, I don't know how you get the handle for it, but I think if you're going to do that, take off corner as well. Casuals. Just have it as casuals. It's clean, and it's kind of the. I don't want to sound a bit more. It's not necessarily superficial, but it's almost a minimalistic approach, right? And that is kind of overdone, but it is just such a trending thing. And casuals just looks cleaner even just from a branding perspective. It's like an intangible, right? If someone searches it up or sees it on Instagram, they see the one word big brand. It punches more, right? No pun intended there.
100%, and that's exactly what my idea was, to drop not the MMA, the corner as well, and just have casuals. The difficulty with that becomes finding the handle which can facilitate that, which
Who's
is
got that?
the tricky part of it. However, it is something that I do need to take care of. And also, the reason I say that and why I know that to be the right decision as well is because, like I always say, I read the comments, but I also read the comments in real life. And what I mean by that is I see how people perceive me, or what they say, or what things resonate with them, or what things they remember. And the one thing that is always echoed back to me is casuals. People will say, casuals corner, but they usually don't. It's usually just casuals. People think that when we're branding or when we're marketing as a business, we have all of these grand plans of how people are going to remember us and think about us and what they're going to see and what they're going to like and remember. But what I've learned over the years is people remember this much, like this much. And if I'm pixelated on the screen, it's a microscopic amount, right? So you have to give them just such a small thing to remember and give them nothing else. Nothing else. You can't give them a drop more information. So what I mean by that is the slogan, right? Keep it casual. That's a very small thing for people to remember. It. But people do, because it's only one. You
just got to get them hooked. That's it. That's it. And I want to boost your chances here, or make you feel a little bit better, because a lot of times when you worry about someone having a certain tag or ID that you want and you want to actually purchase, the good news is, I'll show this to the camera now. I don't know if you can see that. 36 followers with absolutely nothing going for it. So that is pretty much perfect for you. In fact, you could probably get that for free. I know if you have enough reputation and stuff like that, you can just take handles if the account hasn't had any activity on it and doesn't necessarily look like that one does. No profile picture, no following, or not very little followers, or 0 posts. Mate, that's yours for the taking. That is all you. Make the move on that. Proactive. Be proactive, and you have the leverage. I'd actually have no idea, if I'm honest. I have no idea, but I know you can do it. So
it's
just something to think about. Yeah, I mean, well, he's private, so good luck with that. And it doesn't look like looks like there's zero activity on the account, but could be wrong. You never know. If not, I think Instagram. I mean, their customer support is terrible. But again, you have I don't want to say clout. I hate that word, but it is true. You have that. You have those. You have the means to do it. So I reckon be proactive, like we say, and like we did say we were going to do this year. Be proactive, take the initiative, and go for it. And I think that's a lovely little place to round off what was a really, really insightful and knowledgeable episode of the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 100. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next Sunday. Have a good one and keep it casual.